8,300 within August 2024 till January 2025. Some incidents shook the whole nation, like the moral policing in Cox's Bazar, the harassment of a Dhaka University employee over her dress, and the rape and death of an 8-year-old girl in Magura. After the political changes in 2024, a group calling themselves Tahudi Janata, or conscious Muslim citizen, started using religion as a weapon or reason to harass women in public. Women have been attacked for how they dress, how they walk, or even for smoking in public. Even worse, many of the attackers are released within a day and welcomed as heroes. Some go on social media and justify their crimes. This is not religion. It is partially and hate disguised as faith. It is dangerous culture where harassing women is seen as normal and protecting women is seen as weakness. These problems do not exist in isolation. After the July 2024 uprising and the political transition, our society became deeply divided and anxious. When fear spreads, people look for someone to blame, and minorities and women become easy targets. Ignorant attitude, extremist ideas, and weak law enforcement make things worse. We are now seeing hate, public abuse, violence, allow kind of where everyone's freedom is at risk. So what we can do? First, the government must ensure that every case of communal or group-based violence is investigated fairly and independently. Justice must be equal, not selective. Second, those who speak for justice, journalists, lawyers, activists, must be protected, not punished. Third, we must invest in education and awareness. Children should grow up learning respect, equality, and empathy, not hate or control. Finally, the international community must support local human rights defenders, women's groups, and minority communities. Solidarity gives them strength and safety to continue their work. Dear honorable guest, the struggle for human rights is not just about the country, it is about all of us. Bangladesh's story is a reminder that freedom and equality need constant protection. We must stand together for the women silenced by fear, for the family forced from their home, and for every person who dares to speak the truth. Let us be clear, no one should suffer for their faith, their gender, or their voice. Justice is not a dream, it is a duty, and it is the duty we all share. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much for your insightful talk in this matter. Now, on the same women and minority rights, I would like to invite Ms. Natalia Sineva Pankowska. She is the representative of the Never Again Association Poland, and she is also a human rights expert, peace educator, and author, and she specializes very much on the Holocaust studies and reconciliation. Now, Natalia, ma'am, thank you for coming, and I would like to hand over the show to you.
Thank you very much, distinguished chair, distinguished colleagues and friends. It is an honor to speak with you today and to be with you today on behalf of a Never Again Association and Minorities for Peace Initiative. And I'm very grateful to the Global Center for Democratic Governance and South Asia Democratic Forum for bringing us all us together to address the critical situation in Bangladesh today. As someone who has dedicated years to the study of genocide history and minority rights in Eastern Europe, and being minority myself with indigenous roots, I am following the ongoing crisis in Bangladesh with particular focus on minorities and post-genocide process of dealing with the past and reconciliation. And what is the role of minorities in this process? Today, I would like to speak not just as a scholar, but first of all, express my solidarity with the people of Bangladesh, especially those of diverse communities, minorities, indigenous peoples, journalists, writers, lawyers, and civil society representatives. We focus on women. Bangladesh is a diverse country with Hindu, Buddhist, Christians, and other minorities being an integral part of it, as well as indigenous people. And as it has been already mentioned, the reported numerous cases of violence against religious minorities and indigenous peoples and rising attacks on places of worship, temples, churches, and other religious sites, attack against minorities, women, rapes are especially alarming today. The society is also highly traumatized, and minorities feel insecure to express fully their identity today in the current context of Bangladesh. Such attacks are often minimized or accused by portraying the victims as politically involved and therefore legitimate targets. There are reported attempts to minimize or justify violence by saying that minorities are politicians or connected to political parties or were involved with a political party, Awami League. Therefore, it's not a violence, it can be justified. This is a strategy which usually used by perpetrators of those who deny, distort atrocities and genocide, but by transferring the guilt to victims themselves. We have seen this pattern in many parts of the world, where genocide happens in the past, and perpetrators shift the blame to victims to justify atrocity crimes, to justify themselves. Minorities supported the previous government because it was largely more inclusive and secular and accepted minority narratives. Bangladesh was founded through a violent liberation struggle of 1971, a war that culminated in genocide of over 3 million Bengali people by the Pakistani military with support of local collaborators. And this genocide, for well documented and widely recognized by survivors and some other genocide organizations such as Genocide Watch, for example, remains a deeply polarizing issue with Bangladesh today. And its effects continue to impact Bangladeshi society today. Yes, Bangladesh is a post-genocide society, and to a large extent, many challenges it faces today are consequences of this incomplete process of dealing with the past. The process of dealing with the past is the framework which we know was developed in post-conflict, post-genocide context, and it addresses the needs of communities, including minorities, by acknowledging history, recognizing victims, and ensuring accountability. And in 1997, the United Nations outlined 4 interdependent pillars of dealing with the past: the right to know, documentation, truth, historical records, the right to justice, tribunals, accountability, protection of victims, the right of reparations, rehabilitation, memorials, healing, restitution, the guarantee of non-recurrence, protection of minorities, indigenous people, peace building, and disarmament. None of these have been fully realized in Bangladesh. Until truth is acknowledged, until justice is delivered, the minorities are protected, the cycle of violence will be continuing and continuing. Yes, Bangladesh has made significant efforts towards seeking justice for the atrocities of 1971 through the International Criminal Tribunal, which has been persecuting those responsible for war crimes. I mean local collaborators. However, this effort is now under threat. And this is an attempt of historical revisionism. The textbooks are being changed or are going to be changed soon. The museum narratives are also supposed to be changed, and I think it can happen soon, to serve political goals of certain political parties, complicit of collaboration during the genocide. What would be placed for minorities and indigenous people in this? Will they be included in the narrative? At the moment, we know that judges, lawyers, human rights activists, journalists, such as our friend Shahriar Kabir, a writer and journalist, silence.
Can you see
And
anywhere else with away from the piano?
Sorry?
No, is there somebody else speaking? Can that person be on mute for some time?
Oh, sorry. This
Please go
symbolizes a
ahead.
danger.
Please go ahead.
Sorry, I can go, yes? I can continue. So at the moment, we see that these people, such people as Shahryar Kabir, a human rights defender, writer, and a great friend in Central and Eastern Europe, are being silenced, suppressed, or accused of politically fabricated cases. This symbolizes a dangerous inversion of historical truth. And if it will continue, it will impact the country's future and its ability to have a proper process of dealing with the past and rebuild itself after the trauma. The protection of minority are equally essential and part of dealing with the past. Minority rights are based on 4 pillars, again defined by the United Nations: protection of existence, protection and promotion of identity, equality, non-discrimination, and the right to effective participation, including state and political participation. In Bangladesh, minorities, whether religious, ethnic, or political, are often on front line of violence and marginalization. For example, the situation of Hindu Bangladeshis, as well as other minorities, is increasingly dangerous, and their safety, their possibility to express their identity, to participate actively in political life, today under threat, and they're afraid and scared of mob violence, but also lack of protection. So there should be more protection from the government. And Bangladesh history of inclusivity as reflected in the founding ideals of its liberation struggle, secularism, as said by our friend Shahryar Kabir, must be respected and followed. And the state must ensure that all citizens, regardless of their religion, ethnicity, or political affiliation, are protected and able to live in peace and actively participate in political life and all other aspects of life. And minority rights are fundamental to the concept of inclusive citizenship. And I think it's very important for Bangladesh to think about this now. And we would like to address international community and call international civil society. This is time when human rights organizations such as Human Rights Watch and many others should be and stand together with genocide scholars and genocide studies organizations such as Genocide Watch, Never Again Association, Lemkin Institute for Study of Genocide, and others. So human rights organization and genocide studies organization, they should work together and know this historical context and help also to Bangladesh to build more inclusive community, and also to investigate violence against minorities to ensure accountability. And of course, demand the release of human rights defenders and minority rights friends, such as Bangladesh friend Shahryar Kabir. Joy Bangla, Joy Bangabandhu. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your insightful talk, and I hope your solidarity for the people of Bangladesh reaches the people of Bangladesh, and I hope situations also change. And thank you so much for your talk. Now, I would like to invite Dr. Chongsi Aye Joseph. He is the President, CEO, Center for Human Rights and Peace Advocacy from Cameroon. He has 20 years of experience in human rights, and we would all like to know brief about his own perception on the women and minority rights, which is deteriorating right now in Bangladesh. Off to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for having me in this very important international forum and conference on Bangladesh. As a matter of fact, I want to thank you again for that wonderful introduction, and very modest introduction of myself as a human rights specialist, in international human rights law with a PhD in that. And so I have listened carefully to the previous speakers who have raised very important issues related to the violation of general violation of human rights in Bangladesh. At this point that I'm about to talk about women, I want to refer specifically to instrument regulating women's rights. And before I do that, I want to state clearly that the recent report published by the United Nations on population indicates that women constitute more than 50% of the world's population. And as they constitute 50% of the world's population, when it comes to Bangladesh, they are 50-something point, something percent, which means they are still more than men in Bangladesh. And yet, with this overwhelming number over men, they still constitute the least population that occupy formal positions in governance structures. And so it is important, therefore, to look at the instruments that regulate women's rights so that they can be able to benefit from the protection of the law, first international law, second national law, which of course the government is struggling to incorporate this law into national law for the benefit of these people and to benefit of everybody. Let me first of all look at the 3 principles of human rights. The first principle is the principle of equality. The principle of equality, though even as it is a little general, tells us that we are born equal in dignity and in rights and supposed to act towards another in the spirit of brotherhood. This is enunciated in Article 1 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And so the principle of equality becomes a fundamental principle in human rights, that which nobody should tamper with. And then we have also the second principle, which is the principle of non-discrimination. And the principle of non-discrimination is captured by Article 2 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which simply means we should not discriminate against each other on the basis of color, social status, sex, political, religious, and other opinion. Discrimination in any of these issues constitute violation of the person's right and therefore constitute violation of women's right in Bangladesh, as it has been elucidated by previous speakers, and as we know. And the third principle, fundamental principle, is the principle of participation. And the principle of participation enjoins everybody, including women, to participate in the governance of his community, of his state, and international organizations. And this principle is captured by Article 21 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in its sub 3, and Article 25 of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights in Article 25. And so it is important, therefore, to note that these basic principles of human rights does not only relate to men and their like, but it concerns women, minorities, indigenous people, and so on and so forth. So it is fundamental. And we're supposed to monitor the violation of this right in order to seek for redress. I want to come now to specific instruments related to women's rights. And I'm talking about the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women. It is the UN Convention. Complete comprehensive definition of discrimination against women is found in its Article 1. Violation of this article constitute violation of women's rights and therefore constitute a matter of litigation. To move on, we will also realize that women, because I have heard somebody talking about discrimination, violence against women, which violence, aspect of violence is also trafficking in women. And Article 6 of this convention forbids trafficking in women, which is an aspect of violence against women. And so if we move on, therefore, to now, how do women participate in the governance of their society? Article 7 gives the right to participation. I'm saying this because we have all heard that elections are on the way in Bangladesh, and women constitute the vast majority of the Bangladeshi population, which means women should take the lead in this elections. Women to elect the persons they would like to be governed by. Because of the overwhelming number, they can do that. And so it is also said that we should involve women in all peace processes in our communities, in our nation. And so UN Resolution 1625, UN Resolution 1625 clearly requests states to involve women in all peace processes. We are talking about the revolution that took place in Bangladesh between July to August. How were women involved in the resolution of this conflict? How have women been involved in the resolution of this conflict? This is what we ought to be monitoring, taking down notes, taking that information, so that when there is any inquiry commission that comes down, we should be able to fit the information with what we have, not to allow it happen, as the previous speaker presented the UN report that has a lot of loopholes, because certainly they did not have contrary information rather than that which was provided by the state. We need to do this as civilians, as civil population. We need to do this as civil society in order to help out things. And so with this one, we are therefore saying that women should be involved in all peace processes in conflict situations in any country, including Bangladesh. And I want to say that Article 4 of the Convention on the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women also state that government should take affirmative action, which affirmative action is intended to protect women, give women the chance to enjoy their rights, which may sound like discrimination against men, but the affirmative action should be temporal because they want to protect women. These are provisions of international law that we should address our minds to and see in what way we can help women enjoy their right and participate in the governance of the nation. And so I want to say again that we all know that women need to have access to justice whenever their rights are violated. And access to justice entails quite a number of issues. First, they need to know whether their rights are violated or not, which means there is need for education, training, and so on. We cannot only sit and we allow our people, our women, to continually be maltreated, to continually be battered because of ignorance of the law. We need to train them on international and national laws that benefit them in order for them to have access to justice. We also need to train key stakeholders, judicial police officers who carry on investigation, magistrates and lawyers, so that they should understand. We know that because of religious practices, because of discrimination at the level of strength, those who hold keys power discriminate against women. We need to train them to understand that women constitute an important resources in every state, especially in the case of Bangladesh, where they are more than 50% of the population, and therefore constituting very important human resources that we cannot joke with. We would want to note again that revolutions in the world have always been led by women. And so I want to call on the Bangladeshi women to stand up for their rights and fight for their rights and die for their rights. What comes to mind is the case of Rosa Parks in the then United States Society, where the blacks were being discriminated upon, where the blacks were not allowed to sit in the same bus with whites. And there was this black woman, Rosa Parks, who came and sat in front where the white people ought to be sitting. And she was beaten and sent to jail. But what happened after is what is our great interest. That today she was exonerated. And in the US today, there is a special day set aside for Rosa Parks. And so it is important to note that women take leads in every resolution. It is in the same light that during the French Revolution of 1789, the march of the women to Versailles in France caused the collapse of Louis XIV, who was considered as being the god sent by God on earth, and that he had the right of death and life over his citizens, but he was pulled down by women. The collapse of the Versailles led to the storming of the Bastille, where political prisoners were imprisoned. But today,
Interrupting you, sir, I would like you to conclude a bit earlier, as we are running short of time again.
Thank you. Today, we see France as a democratic country, with women being considered as part of the important resources in the society. Let us end, therefore, by saying, if injustice becomes the rule, if injustice becomes the law, then resistance must become our duty. We need to resist. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your insightful talk, and especially on providing this awareness to all of us that women should step up for their rights, knowing what their rights are. Now, I would like to invite Mr. Rahman Khalilur Mamun. He is the president of International Forum for Secular Bangladesh, based in Switzerland, and he is also a human rights defender and journalist. Over to you, sir. I would like you to take on with the show now. Sir, you are inaudible, unfortunately.
I think, do you hear me?
I
Are
can
you
hear
hearing
you.
me? Thank you. First of all, I would like to thank so much for give a opportunity to on this international conference. I would like to give a respect and Dr. Habibi Millat, who is the organizer and the president of the organization, and thanks to the moderator, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. The aftermath of Sheikh Hasina government fall has seen a significant rise in violence against women across Bangladesh. Reports of number of rape and other forms of violence have become alarmingly frequent. Incidents such as the gang rape of two young women in South Karanganj on August 9 and the gang rape of the elderly woman in Sudrodra Udayan on September 7 reflect the grim reality women face in this troubled period. In both cases, the culprits remain either under dignity of the absconding, highlighting systematic failures in the law conflicts and justice delivery. The gang rape in South Karanganj involved 6 individuals, which only one arrested by locals and the handed over to the police. The remaining accused remain unstable. Similarly, the Shudra Udayan incident, where a 65 years old woman was attacked while seeking relief in the capital, uh, demonstrators and the virtuality of the woman even in public spaces. The case was transferred to the Women Support and the Investigation Division, yet no progress has been made in dignity of apprehending the perpetrators. Both incidents were filed under the Section 9(3) of the Prevention of the Oppression of Women and Children Act 2000. But the lack of arrest underscores the identification of the legal and the policing systems. From January to September, police records reveal that the starting 12,769 cases were filed under the Women and Children Rapes Prevention Act 2000. Of these, 10,686 cases were especially related to the violence against the women, while the remainder concerned child abuse. A total of 24,339 individuals were accused in these cases. However, only 7,835 arrests were made. This means that more than two-thirds of the accused remained at large, further emboldening offenders and the perpetrators a culture of impunity. The data from the police headquarters paints a stark picture of the systematic inadequacies, while the Prevention of Oppression of Women and Children Act provides legal provisions to address such crimes. Its enforcement remains inconsistent and largely ineffective. The lack of the timely arrest and the inability to trace perpetrators, even a high profile cases, underscore the need for urgent reforms in the country's legal and policing machinerism. Beyond the numbers, these incidents highlight the border.
Hello, hello, Mr. Rahman. Can you hear me? Hello. I think he disconnected or some.
Go to next session, please.
Yes, absolutely. So, as he has, I think, some problem with his connectivity, I would like to proceed to the next session regarding the freedom of expression and journalism, which is again in decline, complete decline in Bangladesh. We can see very well about how much the increase of yellow journalism has increased, including the complete manufacturing of fake news, which is coming out every day from Bangladesh, targeting India and whoever might be speaking against the interim government of Bangladesh from inside Bangladesh as well. Hence, regarding talking about this matter and bringing it up to the public, I would like to invite Dr. S.M. Masum Billah. He has been a human rights lawyer and a visiting professor to the University of Côte d'Azur from France. So, on to you, Dr. S.M. Masum Billah, sir.
Hello. Am I audible?
Hello. Absolutely.
Excellent. Thank you very much for giving me the floor. And it's evening here at the Co-France Riviera. And I welcome all the distinguished scholars, participants of this August conference. And such a privilege to find myself amongst these bright minds from all over Bangladesh, India, and elsewhere of the globe. And I'm speaking from the land of liberté, fraternity, and égalité. That three core expressions probably tells everything and also covers all the issues this conference since last few hours have been trying to convey. Now, just focusing on to the particular issue this session is going to focus on is about freedom of expression and the status of journalism in the post 5th August settings and scenario. And to be very honest, the issue is interlinked with other issues so far has been discussed and analyzed by the respected speakers. That reminds us the individuality of the idea of human rights. I would like to view the issue from its interconnectedness, its mellowness, its indivisibility, and its universality of the idea. That being said, I must interpret the issue of freedom of expression and journalism with the right to life, liberty, property, body, reputation, freedom of association, freedom of assembly, right to profess religion, right to freedom of thought and conscience. So when I speak about freedom of expression, I mean to include all these interconnected rights together and the emphasize on the idea of human rights to be materialized by the government through the executive machinery and through the judicial process of a particular country. In particular, the history of Bangladesh actually has been the history of human rights canvas. Bangladesh itself is a product of human rights violation. Look at the 1971 War of Liberation. Bangladesh declares its independence against the canvas of widespread contempt to human rights and disregard to human civilization. That's why when we talk about freedom of expression, right to liberty, or freedom of press, everything that matters to us matters to us very much in a significant manner. Now, if I would like to draw your attention to the constitutional guarantee itself, which Bangladesh has placed to itself, right, in Article 39 of the Constitution of Bangladesh, it says, freedom of thought and conscience is guaranteed. That's clear and very poignant. There is no other qualification, unreserved. Article 2 of Sub-Article 2 of Article 39 says, it reminds first some restrictions. It reads like this: subject to any reasonable restrictions imposed by law in the interest of security of a state, the security of a state, friendly relations with foreign states, public order, decency or morality, in relation to contempt of court, defamation, or incitement of an offense. These 9, restrictions. The state is reminding you, firstly, all these restrictions and probably very heavyweight restrictions and very slippery restrictions, wide enough to be abused by the authoritarian regime like Professor Yunus and his council of members. Very ironically, I want to remind this panel that the law advisor, Professor Asif Nazrul of this current government, used to conduct or anchor a TV program which was called Article 39, which says freedom of thought and expression. Unfortunately, and the paradox is that under his government now, the status of freedom of expression is greatly undermined and choked. So Article 39, they say, subject to these restrictions, right to every citizen to freedom of speech and expression and freedom of the press are guaranteed. Very important to be noted that freedom of speech and expression has been separately mentioned and freedom of the press has been guaranteed in a separate clause. That means in Bangladesh, the framers of the constitution wanted to emphasize separately upon the rights of the journalist, upon the rights of the freedom of the press. That's very important, but very shocking that in the current state of Bangladesh, these rights are are under threat. As an academic, what attracts my attention is 4 or 5 cases I would like to mention, among other statistics to be soon shown to you. Number 1, let me remind you the story of Farzana Rupa, the courageous woman journalist of Ekattur television, who used to, make accountable all the famous ministers of the previous government, has been unreasonably, arbitrarily arrested and detained in false and fabricated cases. And it has been by now 1 year, Rupa and her husband has not been guaranteed bail. Rupa's issue is not only a matter of journalism, it is also a matter of women's justice, how the status of the women and their freedom of expression is being treated under this interim regime. And her story is also related how a mom journalist, like of a minor, is being treated and unreasonably, illegally, arbitrarily, capriciously is being denied bail, which is a fundamental character of criminal justice system of Bangladesh. Right. Second story I want to remind is about Shahryar Kabir, who is one of the speakers have referred to. Kabir's story is more pathetic. It is not the first time Shahryar Kabir is serving the imprisonment or unlawful detention. I remind you, in the post-2001 minority persecution scenario, Kabir was arrested, Kabir was detained. For what? What was her crime? His crime? Because he filmed the systematic minority repression in the post-2001 election. There was a challenge before the court, and the court declared it illegal. But now, even you cannot even challenge them. Even the bail is not being guaranteed. A very fundamental tenet of the criminal justice system. Third one I want to mention is Munzurul Alam Panna. Panna, was very much vocal, was airing, TV, YouTube program or social media program, being cornered from the mainstream television, and his organization probably organized a talk on the 1972 Constitution, which will speak about secularism, pluralism. Panna was arrested from the press club itself, and he shouted "Joy Bangla," right? So his voice is being chalked down, right? And one of the freedom fighters, Abdul Latif Siddiqui, Bulbul, was captured. Hafizur Rahman Karzan, a very progressive professor of Dhaka University, was also arrested unreasonably from that occasion, from that event. Fourthly, the banning of Awami League itself. Even writing a single word in the Facebook about Awami League and the collaborators, quote and unquote, those shore of Awami League, is susceptible to be arrested and detained. Can you imagine it? Even a single post in the Facebook, under the misuse of the so-called anti-terrorism law, which by now the Human Rights Watch and many other international watch bodies have rightly referred that the current administration is using the anti-terrorism law to chalk down the voice of the journalists. Very sad, unfortunate. Now, let us not forget the latest warning given by Shafiqul Alam, the press secretary of Professor Yunus, reminding that, look, don't dare to take the interview of Sheikh Hasina. Even he is threatening to the Reuters and independent journalists out of his jurisdiction, antithesis to any kind of guaranteed principle of human rights. Like, okay, you cannot take the interview. Remember the history and the crimes he has committed and don't forget the context. Now, you are also reminding to the international journalist whether somebody will take whose interview, you are trying to regulate it. Now, look at this. And they have spreaded all kind of hatred and animosity in the society. And I don't know what kind of gain they are being trying to achieve. I can show you more. The statistics will tell more sordid pictures. I want to remind the panel or other participants of this session, let us not forget that the denial of accreditation of 167 journalists soon after the assumption of this interim, so-called interim government, which is arguably unconstitutional and illegal. It does not fall in any defined government guaranteed by the and prescribed by the Bangladesh Constitution, nor it fulfill the so-called, efficacy theory, obsolete efficacy theory by Professor Grundnom theory, etc. Now, another report is saying at least 25 journalists have been implicated in crimes against humanity case. See, crimes against humanity case just simply because they were associated to a TV channel and they have your reports in the previous war trial cases. Now they have been implicated to what? Crimes against humanity cases. Can you imagine it? Then look at this figure. 266 journalists have faced criminal cases so far. So they all belong to pro 71 journalists. Indiscriminately, they are being attacked. So the total statistics is that up to March 25, the statistics which I have right, according to the persecution team, which I am also a part of that research group, they have mentioned that up to March 2025, 182 journalists have been implicated in cases. And criminal intimidation has been given to 206 journalists. Accreditation has been cancelled, just I have mentioned 167 journalists. And there are many more. Attacks have been launched on 640 journalists. And had my time allowed, I could have shown you all the pictures. Now, these figures tells us the horrific history. What did the chief advisor told us in the very dawn of his assumption of power? Who himself took the indemnity? Let us not forget that he has given indemnity only to those who were associated to the protesters. This kind of demonstration and making a discrimination itself. A culture of impunity.
Interrupting again, sir, I would like you to proceed a bit so that, no, sir, I mean, we are running out.
I will draw conclusion in 1 or 2 minutes. Right?
Thank you.
So he said that mon khule samalochona korun. Make critique by opening your mind. If I literally translated, what is this status? What does all this picture tell us? It's the completely opposite picture. The main television channels, they have been dispossessed, and they are all being occupied by the pro-government people, by the so-called protesters and revolutionists by now. And there is no dissident voice except 1 or 2 to invite to make commentary on the all and sundry political issues. That is the current state of freedom of expression and journalism in Bangladesh. So to draw conclusion that there is I discover a kind of pattern. What is the pattern? The pro-1971 people, the pro-secular force, the pro-Awami League force is not only being prosecuted but also being persecuted. And in campaign to that, the law, anti-terrorism law, the draconian law is being used. Even the judicial system, justice system is being used by denying even at least bail. That's the horrific picture. So my urge to international community is that Bangladesh is far being, behind from being maintaining its international and constitutional commitment. Natalia ended with Joy Bangla. I ended with the call that call to establish this state where the mind should be without fear. I would recall that we should not forget the place that a free society only can afford the dignity of the people. Thank you so very much. It is a privilege to talk to share some of my views with the audience. Thank you so very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for your speech and talk again. And now I would like to hand over the moderator part, especially to Mr. Priyojit Dev Sarkar, an eminent journalist himself. Now over to you, sir.
A very good afternoon. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, previous moderators, organizers. We are learning a little bit behind schedule. I am joining from London. However, we have got an illustrious panel from transatlantic, starting from Canada, America, and then, of course, United Kingdom, and then Lisbon, Portugal, and Arizona as well in the United States. We have had a slight change in the schedule because one of our speakers has to leave. So we will start with our first guest speaker, Mr. Alan Wright. He is the director of West London Chamber of Commerce. He has got 40 years plus illustrious commercial and business experience, especially in investing overseas. He's also a guest lecturer at the King's College London, Brunel University, University of West London. He has a very keen interest on Bangladesh and the Indian subcontinent, as you may say. So I would like to pass the floor to you, Alan, and if you could present your opening remarks, and after that we'll continue with the topic, the rule of law and democracy. That is our section. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Bridget, for your very kind comments. My name's Alan Wright. I'm a career exporter. I've won the Queen's Award for exporting UK goods and goods from around the world globally. I've been a Department for Business and Trade, government trade officer for the British government. And I've had links with Bangladesh all of my life. Friends in London, friends overseas, and people I work with are all at the heart of our London community. Nearly a quarter of London's Muslim population are from Bangladesh, and in total, 6% of London's population. So we need to look after our Bangladesh links and work closer with them to make sure that we all live in this world together happily. Bangladesh in recent years has been the home of world fashion, with clothing exports of $55 billion, shoe sales up 35%, and the tech sector growing enormously to $600 million a year. And in some years, 7% growth in the local economy. But with the current situation there, and a population that's double the size of the UK, there needs to be a focus, and the world via the UN and other government agencies need to pay some attention to help what goes on in Bangladesh. It wasn't that long ago, in fact it was quite a long time ago now, that there was a Bangladesh concert to help Bangladesh after its independence. In part it was in London, and in part it was in New York to raise funds for Bangladesh. Now Bangladesh needs help again. And the current situation in Bangladesh, the world needs to know about it. Our news in the UK is full of the atrocities going on in Gaza and Israel and in Syria and in Ukraine. But these are not big population centers. Bangladesh is absolutely a monumental state with a population, as I say, more than double the size of the UK. It's also the heart of the world's clothing manufacturers. Now, how does Bangladesh get the world's attention? Quite soon, our shelves will start to become empty as we run up to our Western Christmas. People will start to ask questions. But before that, Bangladesh needs to make a noise. And we need to sign a group call for action from the UN and from other government agencies about taking some action in Bangladesh. And that's what I'd like to say today. A big shout out to return Bangladesh back to its happy, peaceful self. Its people are wonderful people, and we need to do more to stand by Bangladesh and support them. It's their hour of need right now, and we need to support them. Thank you all very much for your time today.
Thank you so much, Alan. And you make a very compelling point that what is happening in Bangladesh is not localized. It's not restricted to the local neighborhood. It has got global consequences, including that in the UK and, of course, Transatlantic and Europe. So I had to give Alan the floor first. So my name is Priyojit Debsarkar. I'm joining from London. I have written a few books on Bangladesh, and the topic of today's discussion is the rule of law and democracy post the last year's so-called monsoon revolution. Now, I have listened to some of the speakers. I could not join earlier on, but I have encapsulated whatever has been said so far in just 4 or 5 slides. I'll not take more than 3 minutes. I'm just going to present that to set the tone for the conference and people to observe and reflect. And of course, we will share the slides later on. So I'm just going to try to present the slide which I have created. If they can see, you see it? Is it visible? Is the slide slope visible now, I think? Is it visible? So I think it is visible now. Apologies for the delay. So as we have mentioned that there is no rule of law currently, and the statistics are here. Professor Dr. Yunus, Nobel laureate, his violent mobocracy, which is rampant in Bangladesh, has left 637 people lynched to death between August 2024 and July. 281 people have been injured and severely face life-threatening injuries after. We have got a district-wise major breakdown, and we can see that the capital city Dhaka is taking the lion's share of this mob violence. In the next slide, we can see the number of custodial deaths again, which has gone up, and all these data are from renowned newspapers, media outlets from Bangladesh and beyond, like Pratham Alo, Daily Star, New Age, Dhaka Tribune. What is more shocking, I think the previous speaker was mentioning the atrocities against women and children. So we can see how gruesome rape, gang rape, especially to underage girls, underage women, have skyrocketed. And it reminds us of the same horrible atrocities of 1971, where more than 300,000 women and young children were violated against their will. by the Pakistani army, predominantly from Punjab and their local collaborators. And my next slide, I've got some media citations, and these are again from very renowned, very credible international media like Voice of America, BBC, Amnesty, Reuters, and they are all echoing that what is happening in Bangladesh. And this is just a vote of thanks to the organizers, and that Bangladesh was founded on the basis of pluralism. So it is based on the Bengali cultural identity rather than religious fault lines. Okay, I would now like to invite Mr. William Solan, who is joining us from Canada, Toronto. He's an international human rights lawyer, constitutional expert, and also have first-hand experience of how the authorities of Bangladesh react to foreign lawyers or journalists, because he was detained in the year 2008 in Bangladesh for holding a press conference. So I would like to ask you, sir, that if you want to recall your memories or share something from the past, and what do you see where we are going ahead? If you want to start your deliberations, please. As a brief outline, it's a 10-minute duration to be fair to all our speakers. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you for the invitation. You know, when I saw the news about the August 5th, I wrote right away an email to my friend Shariar Kabir, and we exchanged emails for a few days. And he told me, this is worse than 2002, much worse. That was when I first met him. He had just been released from jail, as was mentioned earlier by our Polish friend. People, mostly Hindus, who had been chased away from their homes in the period prior to the elections and after the elections. And he was charged with anti-state activities because, of course, he was trying to make the government look bad, and you're not supposed to do that. And an international campaign had resulted in his being released. And I met him again in 2005 when I attended a human rights conference that was organized by the Awami League and others who were in opposition still at the time. There'd been a lot of killings. And during the week that I was there, this was when Katrina was destroying New Orleans. And I met with some people, including journalists and a BNP member of parliament, the retired military officer. And they told me that there was a plan for 2008, that during the period running up to the elections, there would be, of course, some street violence, and that would be used as an excuse by the army to cancel the elections. And lo and behold, 2008 came around, and that's what happened. Now, Sheikh Hasina at that time, the beginning was, that time was detained in her home. And she was allowed out one day to go and visit a friend in the hospital. And coming out of the hospital was asked what she thought about the present situation in Bangladesh at the time. Her answer was, well, what do you expect with the DGFI running the show? The DGFI is the Director General of Forces Intelligence, the military intelligence. So the next morning she was in detention and detained in a house on the parliamentary grounds. And they started trial proceedings against her, accusing her of some sort of corruption. Now, the situation bears parallels with other countries. Most recently, in Brazil, former President Lula was accused of corruption and ended up spending some actual time in jail and being barred from running for president, which allowed Jair Bolsonaro, the fascist, to be elected. Now, Lula was released afterwards because the case was not really founded. It was an invented case, and he is again president of Brazil. It also has parallels. The situation we've got today has parallels with what happened in Haiti about 20 years ago, when Jean-Bertrand Aristide was told by he didn't have an army, but the armed force that he had, which was a mercenary force charged with his protection, were told him that they could not protect him from the armed group that was coming in from the Dominican border, but they could assure his and his family's safety by giving him a helicopter ride to the airport and then a plane ride out of the country. Very similar to what happened on August the 5th last year. Now, in 2008, when I tried to attend Sheikh Hasina's trial, but was prevented from doing so by one of the police forces. And my comment at the time was, and I quoted from former Canadian Prime Minister Pierre Elliott Trudeau, Justin Trudeau's father. Now, Pierre Elliott Trudeau wrote this back in the 1950s when he was editing a magazine called Cité Libre. He said, "The army is not a good school for democracy." And I think that's important because people have been talking about Yunus and his cabinet as though they were, although people generally comment that this is not a constitutionally formed government. Of course, it's not a constitutionally formed government. There was an army coup on August 5th. It wasn't a few hundred or a few thousand people in the streets, even if they had gotten a few guns, that could prevent the army from restoring order. The army decided that it was time for Sheikh Hasina and the Awami League to go. And if Yunus and the others are advisors, they're not advising a parliament. They are advising the army, who are running the show. It is the army that is the power today in Bangladesh, and that's clear when we see that they have invoked the Magistracy Act. They have the magistracy powers. They have given judicial powers to every army officer in the country. So when people are arrested and rearrested if they're released on new charges, those charges are coming from military officers. The control of the courts is under the control of the military. They are the ones who are behind all of the changes, replacing people, allowing violence in the courts. The week before Shahryar Kabir was arrested, there was a retired Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, an octogenarian, who was brought into court and beaten so bad that he had to be taken to emergency services for emergency surgery to save his life. And no one was arrested. This is being repeated across the country. International human rights organizations have told us that there are hundreds of thousands of people detained. And this is administrative detention. They haven't even gotten around or bothered to charge them with anything. If they charge them with something, it's 500 people charged for one bystander's death. So these are not serious charges in a legal sense. They're just excuses to claim that they're in jail legally. There's no habeas corpus. There's no bail has been mentioned. And if bail is granted, they rearrest them. This is what happened with the Hindu gentleman down in Chittagong As soon as he was given bail, he was rearrested on new charges. And they're doing it over and over and over. So this is not a legal system. This is a pretend. This is a fallacy, a gaslight. They're making believe. And Mr. Yunus is the equivalent of Janine Darce in Bolivia, the pretty woman with the blonde hair and the big sunglasses up on her forehead, who took over after they expelled Evo Morales a few years ago. These are repetitive things, and each time it's the army that's taking over. It's the army that is installing someone, a clown, to be their facade, to have a big smile. Mr. Yunus has a lovely smile, and he has a Nobel Peace Prize, so he must be a good man. Right? We've just seen another Peace Prize given to somebody who's even just as meritorious, the Venezuelan woman, because they want her to replace Mr. Maduro, who was elected. So when they don't like you, when you don't cooperate, then there are all kinds of ways to change the situation. Today, what they're trying to do is create, and they're arguing about it. I follow the news in Bangladesh. They're continually arguing about it, how to keep the Awami League away from the elections, how to have elections, how to change things without a parliament, how to rewrite the Constitution. They're trying to rewrite the Constitution without a parliament, calling it a charter instead. This is a military government, and I think that all analyses have to be based on that. And it is the issue, I think, that has not been pushed to the fore. The English gentleman who was speaking was talking about getting people to understand the situation. Others also do. We have to publicize what the situation is. But we have to publicize that it is a military coup that happened. It's a military coup. It is the military who is running the show. And that is not getting into the news. That message they have managed to cover up. I think that is the big fight, as far as the fight for people's minds, is to get them to understand that we're talking about a military government here, not a civilian government of some sort. And that their purpose in life is to find a way to have elections where the Awami League and the forces on the left cannot win. So first of all, they want to get rid of Sheikh Hasina, like they did in Brazil with Lula. Why? Because she unites the forces on the left. When I was there in 2008, I had a meeting with a few leaders from the left, and they said, you have to convince Sheikh Hasina to stay, because she is the one who holds all of these left forces together, so that they present one candidate in each riding, whereas the right presents however many they have in different parties, which makes it easy for the left to win elections, because Bangladesh has the same system as Canada. You don't need a majority. It's first past the post. So if there's enough parties around, you can conceivably win an election with 30% of the vote.
Sorry, I'm very sorry, William. I'm sorry to interject. We will continue. We'll pick this up because we are very short of time. I apologize. I get your point. And very well done. So, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to now welcome our next speaker, Robert Bob Lancia. He's a former legislator, Rhode Island House of Representatives. He's an academic. He also served in the United States Navy as a chaplain. Bob has written recently a book on Bangladesh as well. So a very warm welcome, Bob. The stage is yours. Could you please kindly deliberate on the rule of law and democracy in Bangladesh and your broader observations? Thank you.
Bit short. Basically, one of the president's that I really admire and I think was one of our greatest presidents was Ronald Reagan. And Ronald Reagan said this. He said, the United States has no higher mission than to build a lasting peace that enshrines liberty, democracy, and dignity for individuals everywhere. And I believe that this statement emphasizes America's role in promoting freedom globally. But what's happening now, I think, under the current administration, we're picking and choosing. And I think that goes to our earlier comments by Mr. Ride, and also earlier with Dr. Naboo, where he was talking about the need for the country, I think, to have a secular, not religious society, and also focus on democracy. You know, the U.S. has ways, of course, to, you know, push people and get people to do what they want to do. And this current president apparently is very good at doing that. He's traveling around the world, doing all kinds of things, making all kinds of deals. But as Mr. Ride was saying, the size of the country, the importance of the country, it needs to be focus of our country, the United States, and it's not. And sadly, the United States had a hand in getting rid of the former government and installing the UNIS government. And in doing so, they did look the other way as things started to deteriorate. And in fact, our president, President Trump, was so focused on tariffs, of course, that he, you know, heavily was tariffing Bangladesh as well. And again, Mr. Ride makes the point about the importance that it is in so many ways economically. So that affects the country. So we need a change of policy. Our country now we're coming up against, now you've shared with me about Pakistan, China, you know, the whole Asian theater, and these other nations are becoming involved. And I am afraid that, as we're seeing in other parts of the world, the Islamization of Bangladesh. And this can't happen because, you know, they are so strict and so restrictive. And we're seeing it, you know, and it's not a matter of, you know, these small things are happening. This is a large thing happening. It is brutal. It is a brutal regime right now. And the United States needs to take notice, and they need to step in and do something. And I am so disappointed in my government right now, and they need to step up. And, you know, Mr. Trump, president, wants a Nobel Peace Prize. Well, guess what? He's got a lot of work to do to get that Peace Prize, especially in Bangladesh. And, you know, this tariff situation, and then some of the other things that are taking place, we need to step up and get involved. Now, he did take some of the tariffs off because they signed a wheat deal. I think it was a wheat deal that was beneficial to us, but again, I don't think to Bangladesh. So there's a lot of work to do. And to let you know, 2026, I may be running, and it may be for Congress or for United States Senate. And if I do, this is going to be one of my number one issues on my plate. So I will leave it there because there's a lot of great speakers and have said a lot, and I'll keep it short and tight. But we're celebrating in 2026 the 250th anniversary of our independence. And that's great for us. But as we look around to fledgling democracies, I think we need to make a commitment to say, guess what? As part of our 250th celebration, we're going to help these fledgling democracies like Bangladesh get back on track and to become the nation they need to become. Thank you.
Thank you so much.